But before we get to that, I would just love to hear about your journey. How did you get into molecular biology, and what was that journey like?
I actually started in my undergraduate studies in chemical engineering and saw myself at the age of 18 as being an engineer. I got a few years into that and was uh, fairly sure, I'm fairly sure that I didn't want to do chemical engineering, but I did want to do graduate school. So I went to grad school, moved to biochemical engineering, and became more and more interested in molecular biology. But it's really kind of a God thing because also in my undergrad years, I became more and more interested in apologetics. I had not been raised in a Christian home. We had all come to faith in my teen years. So after years and years and years of my family not going to church, suddenly we started going to church. We were all baptized within a space of a month of each other. And 4 years later, I was at Berkeley studying chemical engineering, but also recognizing for the first time a clash of worldview between my new Christian worldview and this worldview that was so evidently non-Christian,
Hmm.
which was the teaching perspective of nearly all the professors at a place like UC Berkeley. And there was an occasion where a chemistry professor used a lecture on the second law of thermodynamics to ridicule arguments for the existence of God or that God had created life based on the second law. And that didn't weaken my faith, but it stirred something in me where I felt like this person is abusing his authority
Hmm.
and has a bunch of 19-year-olds to a lecture theater full of 219-year-olds who see him as sort of an omniscient authority.
Hmm.
And I thought something has gone wrong here, and I would love to be a part of addressing things like this. And so that kind of led me to pray about apologetics, not knowing how the Lord would answer. It had that moment had kind of a key, and the way the Lord answered prayers following that moment had a key influence on my choice to go to grad school and what I ended up doing in grad school. I started to become interested in a critique of Darwinism and specifically molecular Darwinism, so
Hmm.
molecular genetics. Can Darwin's theory explain the origin of new genes? And that's what I felt called to as a grad student and sort of moved my PhD work in a direction that would set me up for that. Got married during my PhD work. The two of us went off, my wife and I went off to Cambridge University for postdoc. And that's where I started to sort of, that was the deep dive into molecular biology. Becoming a molecular biologist was in Cambridge. But it was for
Awesome.
a reason. It was for apologetics.
Hmm. That's super cool. I'm really excited to dive into the conversation, talk more about Darwinism and some critiques that you have. Even going to a Christian school, I just finished my bachelor's and it's in anthropology. So, uh, topic of Darwinism comes up a lot, and there are a lot of assumptions. And coming from a Christian worldview, there are definitely some conflicts, some ideas, and some questions and concerns that come up. But I just never came to a point where I was convinced. I was just always unconvinced by the evidence I would hear on YouTube of proponents arguing for it. So I'm excited to talk about your concerns and what your research has shown in your experiments.